it's about how we can all play our part in supporting organ donation for transplantation by making sure that our families aren't left in any doubt about our wishes around organ donation. And of course, it's a gift of a second chance of life for many. And this year there's been a record number of transplants. And also, I see in figures that at any one time here in Ireland, there are between 550 and 600 people active on waiting lists for organ transplants. Well, there's one couple who have come through it, and they're a living, breathing and smiling example of how it can change a life and how you can come out the other side and lead a normal life. There's Helena Madden Campbell and her husband Hugh from Glenties, and they've joined us now in the studio to tell their story. And very briefly, I'll just here's a spoiler that Helen actually donated her kidney to Hugh and effectively saved his life. So anyhow, you're both welcome to the studio. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, John.
So let's start with you, Hugh. I know you said, ask Helena most of the questions, so I will start with you. But we're going back now, what?
2011.
2011. You were flying fit.
Yes, flying fit.
Doing coaching. Had you stopped?
No,
playing?
I was still playing.
Oh, you're still playing?
Still playing at the time, yeah.
Right. Flying fit. And what happened then? How did you first find out there was something wrong?
It kind of started with a sore head. I went and with a doctor with a pain between my two eyes and it was blood pressure just through the roof.
Right.
And then they rushed me up to Letterkenny, and then from there on just...
So it happened fairly quickly?
It happened.
Yeah, it was coming up to Christmas, I suppose, and Judy was plastering at the time. And he was quiet coming up to Christmas, like a lot of people isn't getting their houses plastered like the week before Christmas. So he was at home with the kids and I was working, and his sister was babysitting for us that time.
You're a nurse?
I was nursing at the time. Yeah. And his sister was babysitting for us, but she was off then doing her bits because he was home and she didn't mind having a bit of time off.
Right.
And I just said he'd be complaining he didn't look well, and he had a flu, and then he was complaining of headaches, and I just said, do you know what, you're not used to being at home with the kids, like, because they were small, they were 2 and 3.
That's what the headache's about.
Yeah, I said that's what it is, you're just not used to having the kids. And he's like, right enough. And I think it went on for about 3 weeks. Oh. And then I went off to work one morning, and he said I might go into the GP today. Yeah. And I said, well, phone them and let me know how you get on. And then I hadn't heard from him about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I phoned him. And he said, I'm just up here at the hospital. And I said, what are you doing up there? He said, just the doctor sent me up, but it's grand, it's fine. And I said, right, I'll pop in after work. So I went down to reception in the hospital, and I said, I'm looking for Hugh Campbell. He was sent up from the doctors, and she looked through her notes, and she said, he's up in cardiac ICU. And I said, no, wrong Hugh Campbell. Like, mine only came in because he has the flu.
Yeah.
And she goes, no. She said, what's the date of birth and all that information? And she said, no, that's him.
That's where he is.
So I hadn't a clue what was going on at that stage. So I was met by a team of doctors and at the door who was telling me what was kind of going on with him, and that he had been in the GP and the blood pressure was 238 over 186.
Right.
And they said they hadn't ever seen anybody walk through the door with that blood pressure. And of course, as a nurse, my head is going like, what the heck is going on here? Like, I've never seen anybody walking around with that. Right. With that blood pressure.
So where did it go from there then? Did you have to straight away? Did you have to go on dialysis, or how did it work?
No. They done a heap of tests to find out what was actually causing it first.
Yes.
And through the end, they found out it was kidneys. They were only working at 22% at that stage.
All right.
Both kidneys just total 22%.
Right.
One was actually dead altogether. Another one was just 22%.
Right. So it was panic stations.
It was. Panic stations to get blood pressure under control.
Yes.
Yeah, and I suppose it kind of went from there then, so that you're thrust then into a world kind of that you don't know much about. It's kind of a club that you don't know anything about until you're thrown into it.
And it's probably a fast learning curve.
Huge learning curve, yeah. So I suppose at that stage it was stable enough at 20% you don't need to be on dialysis. So they said, things could improve. Maybe it's just something, they didn't know what was causing it at the time or why, or this was kind of the early days. So it was like just recurrent weekly appointments with different specialists and that around his kidneys. And then things was okay. They were stable at 22%. And that went on for about 2 years because we we said, oh, well, what do you want to do? Is it holding you back? And I said, yeah, it is. Like, God, I'd love to. We wanted another child, and we had 2 little ones at the time. And we said, God, we wanted 3 or 4. And they said, oh, well, things are steady. It could stay like this forever. It's well controlled. It's well managed. So off we went, and we had another baby in September 2013. And then in October, he had his regular quarterly appointment, and things were starting to go downhill.
Oh.
So we have this 2-month-old baby, and we were told that things would be fine. And we're sitting up in the hospital, and they're saying, right, it's down now at 18. We'll do bloods again now next month in November, and hopefully it won't go down anymore. And I think once it gets below 10, you need to start dialysis. So that was grand. He went for his bloods in November, and things seemed okay, or so we thought. And then January, we went shopping. The little fella Jacob was getting christened. And we went shopping, just the last minute bits and pieces that you would, kind of the Friday before the christening. And my family was all coming in from the States. And we got a phone call. We were in Letterkenny Retail Park shopping, and got a phone call, and he didn't answer it because he didn't know the number. And I answered mine then because it was Gail, who was the renal nurse up in the hospital. And I said, oh, cheekers, that must be Gail trying to get you. So Gail rang, and she said, where are you? And I said, oh, we're out shopping. And she goes, is he himself with you? And I said, he is. And she goes, what does he look like? And I said, oh, he's standing here next to me. He looks grand.
Looks like my husband.
Hi. And she said, God, well, I don't want to alarm you, but the bloods is back there since before Christmas. And she goes, it's not good.
Right.
She goes, there's less than 3%, and you need to get up to the hospital as soon as you can. He needs to start dialysis tonight. And then that was kind of the start of the
really
madness,
serious.
the really serious part then.
So then you went on dialysis, and how long before the transplant were you on dialysis?
2 years.
2 years.
2.5 years, yeah.
And it just totally messes with your life. Everything has to revolve around dialysis.
Yeah,
well, it was nearly 4.5 hours, 3 times a week, hooked up to the machine.
That's right.
And the travel in and out.
Traveling in and out, another hour in each way.
So that means you couldn't work. It means that you're at home looking after now 3 kids.
3 small kids, yeah. So things was tight. It was like being on, the only way to describe it is being on a hamster wheel. So every morning you wake up and it's the same over again. So the days he was going to dialysis, it was grand because he was, I suppose, not even normality, but he had a routine them days. But the other days then, the dialysis sometimes affect you, and you're really sick. So sometimes he'd come home from dialysis and he'd be fine. Other days he'd have to go straight to bed and wouldn't be able to get out of bed until the following day when he'd be back on dialysis again.
And you have to be very careful with your diet too. Not a lot of people would know that.
Yeah, anything.
So what do you have to?
So if you want vegetables or potatoes, they need to be triple boiled, and you can't add salt or butter to them.
So you're boiling everything out of them.
Out of them. If you wanted meat, it couldn't be anything red because that has extra proteins in it. So it had to be pork or chicken. Fish was a no-no as well because they're trying to. So the dialysis cleans all the toxins out of your blood from everything you eat. So I suppose you're trying to limit the toxins going into you because it's less for them to have to take out of you. So just diet was really, really bland, and he couldn't have any fluids either. So I think he was allowed 3 ml fluids per day. So no tea, no water. So you'd nearly feel bad in the morning drinking your cup of tea in front of him.
I remember Yvonne McFadden used to work here telling us similar stories.
She was on dialysis same time as me, yeah.
There you go. And she used to tell us similar stories, and you're thinking, oh my God, and I have the cheek to complain.
Yeah, we couldn't go anywhere either because it revolved around his dialysis. So that means there was no holidays, there was no planning anything, no weekends away with the kids. There was he had to watch out for infections as well, so we couldn't go to the swimming pool, we couldn't go to anywhere crowded, we couldn't go to the cinema, just because he was at higher risk for infection as well.
And all the while you would have been on the waiting list for a donor kidney.
No, it probably took 6 months to 9 months to
get on the list.
You have to do heart tests, and you have to do a heap of tests to get on the list, actually.
Right. Yeah, just to make sure you're fit and healthy and can hold a new kidney. And Alina, at what stage did you say, listen, you know what, we've had enough of this.
Yeah.
Can my kidney be used?
Yeah, so it was coming up to Jacob's first birthday, and I was in the kitchen one morning, and he had just left, and the kids was all kind of complaining that Daddy couldn't go to... Max, the eldest fellow, was really into football, and he'd had a bad weekend because his daddy couldn't go to the football match on the Sunday. And Judy was really, really involved with the kids, kind of up until having to go to dialysis 3 days a week. And Max was kind of crying, and Sophie was a bit narky, and I sat there and I was like, gee, Chris, what are we going to do with this? Like, they were going back to school. And I just got it in my head then. I said, if we don't have a kidney this time next year, I'm going to donate one because I can't keep going like this.
It's no life.
You know, it was no life at all for anybody, not for himself, not for us, not for the kids. And I just decided then. So kind of the year went on and I didn't think about it that much. And you're always hoping every time the phone rings at night, especially when you're like, you have bags packed. We had bags packed in both cars. But
you were a match. It was okay.
Well, we didn't know at that stage if we were a match.
Oh, you didn't know?
So I just said, you know what? I'm going to look to do it now. When Jacob turns, if he doesn't have a kidney by the time Jacob's 2, and I think I didn't even wait till Jacob turned 2. It was the following July.
Okay.
When I just thought, this is going nowhere. Like, we're not getting anywhere. And there was another fella in Glenties, and he was waiting for a kidney as well. And I just thought, there's so many people. And when you go up to the appointments, you meet so many people waiting and no organs coming through. And it's not even that you have to be a similar, I suppose, when you're getting a cadaver organ or a deceased donor organ, it's not even just a matched blood type. You have to have so many similarities with that person. So size-wise, age-wise.
Has to be a perfect match.
It has to be really, really perfect for that.
Okay.
And I just thought, thinking, God, this is like winning the lotto. Like it's going to be really hard. Like winning the lotto would probably be easier than trying to get a kidney.
But for a spouse, would it be commonplace for a spouse to match, to be a good match?
I knew that as well, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. So and that's what happened. I phoned up the transplant coordinator in Beaumont, and just a normal Tuesday afternoon, said, hi, I want to donate somebody a kidney. And they said, okay, hold on a minute, and they got me somebody. And they're probably thinking to themselves, Jady. And they said, okay, who do you want to donate a kidney to? And I said, my husband. And she said, oh God, I don't really want to disappoint you, but that normally doesn't work out.
Right.
And I said, oh, right, but can we try? And she said, sure, can you come up to Beaumont next week or the following week, and we'll get the bloods all done? And I said, no, I can't. I said, I haven't even told him that I'm going to donate him a kidney. I said, and I have 3 little kids and he's on dialysis. I said, is there any way you could take that? Could you send me the tubes and get the blood taken down in the GP?
Yeah.
And she said, you haven't told him? And I said, no, because if I tell him, he's going to say no straight away. So she agreed then, reluctantly, I would say, after my pestering, to post down a box of a blood kit
just to find out if
we were even compatible, because you can build up antibodies against your spouse over the years.
And how long did that take then to find out?
It was about 6 weeks.
All right.
So the bloods went away, and 6 weeks later she phoned me back and she said, I have great news for you. You're a blood match.
All right.
And I said, brilliant.
So when did you tell himself then?
Probably the following day when he came home. And I said,
what was the reaction?
Well, the starter probably didn't think it was a great idea.
No, he was like adamant,
3
absolutely
young kids
not.
and the 2 of us on the one table, looking away.
So he was adamant no, and I was like, listen, I said...
Normal enough reaction, probably.
Well.
Yeah, and I was just onto him. I said, listen, they're going to do all these tests, and they literally put you through the ringer of testing up in Beaumont. So you get an appointment after your bloods come back. You get an appointment to go up to Beaumont for the day. You check in at 8 a.m. and you're not out till 5. And they give you every blood test and scan and... ultrasound that is possibly imaginable known to man to make sure that you are as healthy as you can possibly be to withstand the surgery.
You passed them all?
I passed them all. And then I suppose after that, then I was like, listen, I've passed them all. Like,
so there's nothing holding
there's
us
nothing
back.
holding us back. And I suppose then it was once he agreed reluctantly, it was into full gear trying to organise, I suppose, life for the transplant.
Yeah, and then working around, well, we're both going to be at action for so long, and you have to call in family then.
Yeah, so it was...
But how did you feel then coming up closer to the surgery? Because you're thinking, everything's healthy now, and
well, you have to do another blood test. So coming up to it then, so a few weeks before, you have to do another blood test to make sure that there's still no antibodies there.
All right.
So that was kind of nerve-wracking, because I'm like, God, we've gone through all this. Everybody's planned now, has their wee jobs to do to help with the kids and that. Like, imagine if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So that once we got through that one, then it was great, and then it comes 2 weeks, and it's kind of like, I suppose, the night before is a bit nerve-wracking. Like, I was really confident going into it. I would say you probably weren't as confident. But I was really confident until, like, literally you're sitting in that room the night before and he's moved over to his section of the ward and I'm on mine. And I remember thinking, it's kind of like the night if you play sport, you would know the feeling you get before a really big match.
Yeah, must be a lot of apprehension.
You're nervous, you're apprehensive.
I was on a different side because it was all kidney
sterilised in the receivers, and I was on...
The other side was kind of their nurse's station in the middle.
Right, so you weren't together the night?
We weren't together up
up
until about 11 o'clock, and you had to go on dialysis.
I had to go. All
right.
He had to go on a spinal dialysis thing then.
Right. So anyhow, the operation, the transplantation was done, and what wasn't an immediate? Was it an immediate success, or
no? There was kind of touch and go for a while. So I got out of the hospital, I suppose, day 5. He was kept in for nearly 20 days at that stage. Just, I suppose, there was a few bits and pieces that they weren't happy with, and I mean, they are amazing up there. And if you ever go up to St. Damien's ward, amazing miracle workers, the doctors and nurses up there, and they are 110% happy with you before they're sending you away. So the start, there was just a few wee bits in his creatinine, which is one of the proteins that they test for in your blood, to judge your kidney function, wasn't coming down as they would have wanted it to.
Again, I used to hear Yvonne chatting a lot about that.
So that wasn't coming down as quickly as they wanted. And then they were worried then that there was a problem with the kidney, so we had to go back in and get a biopsy done then. So it was kind of touch and go for a little while. Probably the first probably 8 or 9 weeks. We kind of weren't 100% sure.
I was up once a week I would say for the first
8 weeks.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months. I was up in Dublin once a week for a checkup.
Once a week for a checkup. And then kind of there was a few times that we were kept kind of. So you're phoning home being like, can you have the kids? Can you keep them overnight because he has to get a biopsy, or he got BK virus, which is a virus you can get in the transplanted organ.
All right.
And that can be really disastrous, I suppose. It can destroy the organ. But luckily they're so good at watching you and looking after you that they caught it more or less immediately.
So you were put through the middle, a right bit.
Yeah.
But you came through it.
I came through it,
obviously.
Mile in here.
Yeah. And let's fast forward. Now, many years later, what year was that?
That was 2016.
2016. So here
7
we are.
years.
Now.
7 years,
7 years later.
Yeah.
And you're both sitting here, and both of you healthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Life back to normal.
100%.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Kids doing great.
Brilliant.
Max, I see, he's just made his debut for the minors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a girl who plays for the Donegal 14s.
Yeah.
And how's Oscar doing?
Oh, Jacob,
sorry.
Jacob, the youngest fella, he's brilliant. He's into everything. He's 9, so he's kind of into the Gaelic and into the soccer.
9 coming on 16.
Yeah.
Right. Going up fast then.
Hanging out with the older ones.
So he's a really big supporter of the 2 bigger ones because they play for Donegal. So he wants to do the same. So
great example. Well, you're a living proof that it can work, and that I suppose maybe the message might be that it's not as daunting as you think it is,
as you perceive it to be.
As you said earlier off air, if you can do it, anybody can.
Yeah, if I can do it, literally anybody is able to do it. It was just the idea in my head, and I phoned Beaumont, and they literally laid out all the plans. Everything that was laid out by them, and I was just given days and times to turn up.
Yeah.
And they made it so easy from word go to do it all, and they're so positive, and the supports even that they offer you around it. It just, I suppose, it changes somebody's life. That's what my whole thing around it is that he literally got, and I didn't do it to give him back his life. I did it selfishly so that all of our lives could be back to normal.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking of doing it, or if you have a family member or a loved one or somebody who's waiting a while on an organ, and you see them and they're telling you everything is fine, it's not. It's different behind closed doors when you're at home. Mm-hmm. Things isn't okay. And if you can do it and you want to do it, phone up Beaumont and ask them. They'll give you as much information as you want, and if it turns out you don't want to do it, they'll not put any pressure on you to do it. But it's an easy thing to do, and I think recovery time for me was about 8 weeks, and I was back to normal.
So you obviously recovered a lot quicker, but longer for you, Hugh. But now, looking back, best thing ever.
Yeah, well, because I really did get our life back.
Yeah, like it just the person who receives the organ, it transforms, it gives them their life back, because when you're on dialysis, your life isn't your own. It's up to the hospital ward schedule your dialysis every second day,
Yeah, and our heart goes out to the people that are on dialysis.
Absolutely.
That are up and down to the hospital and out to the hospital.
Waiting for every phone call, every time the phone rings, a bit of hope that you have, and then it goes when it's not the hospital looking for you. So I just think if anybody is feeling that they want to do it, or even to have a chat, about your wishes if you pass, or we would talk to our kids about it all the time, just to get it into their head. The 2 older ones are 14 and 16, to make sure that someday they want to be organ donors, and whether it be living donor or deceased donor, to just have that chat with them. And if you plant the seed early in their heads, it's easier to get the ideas around.
And it's easier to make
the decision.
Make a more informed decision. Okay, Irish Kidney Association, if you want to check out their website, it's ika.ie. Alina and Hugh, great to see you looking so fit and well. And thanks a million for coming in for a chat.
Thanks a million.
2 gig full fibre.